Retired Air Force Sergeant Dan Sherman has just come out on the Jesse Michaels podcast to talk about some absolutely mental things that he has done for the NSA, right? Literally talking, allegedly, to extraterrestrial beings. Crazy stuff. Before we get into the video, be sure to drop a like and subscribe. So, this came from Jesse Michaels' official X account. He put, breaking NSA whistleblower details, highly classified systematic US government program and alien communication program. So, initially, you're like, that's a pretty nuts headline. But then when you check out the actual video title, which is, the NSA hired me to speak to aliens, in quotations, Sergeant Dan Sherman, it gets even more insane. Now, it came with a little video, right, to kind of like hype people up, and then we'll take a look at that. We'll get into who Dan Sherman is. We'll get into the things that he stated. You're not ready for this.
And I want you to mentally hum that tone. And he said that you will eventually feel a connection. The line will change. When I saw the sine wave move, I went, oh, okay, well, there's a mental disconnect there that's not supposed to be happening. That this is not possible.
Our guest today is an Air Force sergeant who worked at the highest levels on classified projects in electronics and signals intelligence for the United States government. We have thorough documentation of his military records. His service is not something you can really argue with, nor is his mental health.
This is the most nonchalant conversation I've ever had about alien telepathic communication.
In this exclusive long-form interview, retired Technical Sergeant Dan Sherman claims that while serving in the Air Force in the early 90s, he was recruited for an extremely classified program at the NSA, or National Security Agency. This program was called Project Preserve Destiny. Project Preserve Destiny's purpose? To telepathically decode alien signals for the NSA. You heard me right. Alien signals that seem to telepathically transmit descriptions of alien abductions across the United States. Alien signals that ultimately gave our very curious guest answers about the very nature of the alien presence on Earth. How these beings travel, how they conceive of time, what they think about humans, and much, much more.
What the
Dan Sherman was originally told by the Air Force captain who read him into the program that he was given this telepathic ability by the aliens themselves when they abducted Sherman's pregnant mother in the early 1960s and altered his genetics while he was a fetus in her womb. This genetic blueprint would allow him to grow into what the NSA would dub an intuitive communicator.
With the IC communication, you can feel it in your brain. You can feel, now you can't localize it. It's not a localization, but I can feel like it's in that area of my brain right there.
Whoa.
And
Sherman believes the NSA may even have tracked him since childhood into his young adulthood and military service until he was finally read into the program.
Do you think that the NSA or powers that be know that this interview is happening?
Because of the extremely sensitive nature of this NSA program and its ties to black programs, Dan tries to abstain mentioning which bases this Project Preserve Destiny was conducted at. But my researchers and I were able to locate one of these bases, and I bring it up at the end of this interview, catching Sherman a bit off guard. Not only that, but at the end of this video, we explore an independent researcher's use of the Freedom of Information Act to learn more about Project Preserve Destiny. He sent a request to the government to see all of the files on it. As you'll see, both the Air Force and NSA's responses to his request are fairly telling. The point is, the skeptics can have at it, but this case isn't going away. It's very hard to dismiss. I'd argue that Dan Sherman's story is one of the most important UFO legacy program-related accounts we have to contend with. So sit back, relax, and prepare to have your worldview crumble with this week's very courageous American alchemist, retired sergeant, intuitive alien communicator, and UFO whistleblower, Dan Sherman.
Obviously, if that's not enough to get you hyped, I don't know what will be. So Dan Sherman, he kind of briefly mentioned like his background and his service there, but in case you don't know, he's very well accredited and he's very sound up here. It may not sound it based off of what he says, but apparently he is. So in his background and his military service, he served in the period in the United States Air Force from 1982 to 1994, totaling 12 years. And he was trained as an electronic intelligence, ELINT, analysis for the National Security Agency, the NSA, a role that he claims was a cover for his true assignment, which of course was this other project, Project Preserve Destiny. Now, with regards to the allegations to the PPD, Project Preserve Destiny, Sherman asserts that he was a part of Project Preserve Destiny, a program where he was trained to intuitive communicator. That's what his job title essentially was, and this training allegedly involved learning to interface telepathically with extraterrestrials to relay information through a secure computer system to NSA handlers. Now, with regards to these ET communications, during his tenure, Sherman claims to have received over 75 messages from an extraterrestrial that he nicknamed Bones, suggesting a structured interaction where he acted as a conduit for alien communication. The project purportedly prepared for a future scenario where electronic communications might fail, necessitating alternative means of information exchange, possibly due to anticipated significant Earth changes. Then there's the public disclosure. So after retiring, Sherman published the book Above Black, Project Preserve Destiny, Insider Account of Alien Contact and Government Cover-Up in 1998. The book details his experiences with the alleged cover-up by the government. Now, Sherman has maintained a pretty low-key, straightforward narrative, emphasizing sticking to facts rather than embellishing, which he believes preserves his credibility to a degree. Now, there is obviously corroboration and skepticism. So there are FOIA, Freedom of Information Act requests. Independent researcher Noah Hradex, I probably butchered that name, I do apologize. Freedom of Information Act requests have indirectly supported Sherman's claims. The US Air Force forwarded Hradex's inquiry about Project Preserve Destiny to the NSA, which they cited for national security reasons for not disclosing further information. This routing suggests the project's existence within government records, though specifics remain classified. On the other hand to this, as there always is, there is an element of skepticism. So despite military records and psychological evaluation supporting his service, skeptics demand more concrete evidence, such as genetic proof of manipulation, which Sherman has not provided at this time, which is very interesting. And his story's lack of sensationalism is noted, but the absence of verifiable scientific evidence keeps it at the realm of belief rather than fact for many. Now, interestingly as well, of course, his own testimony kind of also mentions that he can feel this implant in his brain, which, for anyone that kind of understands the brain, there's no nerves in your brain. Like, literally, someone could, like, lobotomize you and poke your brain. You wouldn't feel someone poking your brain. So the fact that he says that he can feel it in there is throwing a few people off as well, but that's just a little nitpick. Cultural impact, of course, you know, Sherman's story is part of a broader narrative about UFO lore, contributing to discussions and government secrecy, alien contact, and human extraterrestrial interaction. And there's also a lot of other stuff. But what was also very interesting was on Jesse Michaels' post over on X. He obviously kind of goes into it and he kind of outlines the key segments that they talk about. Number one being the NSA recruitment, then genetic engineering for intuitive communication. And then he goes on to obviously talk about the inside program, but alien contact obviously is going to be the bit that everyone's very keen on. So Sherman has met 2 ET beings. One's he nicknamed Bones and Spock because he was a Star Trek fan. Bones and Spock told him all about the alien presence and how UFOs fly and humanity's place in the cosmos. which is absolutely mind-boggling. So the secrecy and moral weight of the project crushed Sherman. Despite wanting to serve, he eventually used the military's don't ask, don't tell policy as a legal loophole to escape, a decision that he speaks to the intense mental cost of participating in these hidden alien programs.
And he said, I'm gonna
and
play
obviously there's also the larger unfolding story. So, you know, this hints at a far deeper and coordinated system, a decades-long effort to merge biology, intelligence, and extraterrestrial contact, operating in the shadows for national security state. This, on paper, if you wrote this down and sent it to someone and said, what's your thoughts on this? They'd be like, you're literally off your rocker. But the way that Sherman speaks about this, he's so, you know, I don't know how to describe it. He's so like, yeah, this is how it is. To the point where people are like, wow, this guy, like, you know, he's saying it with such chest and so brazenly that there must be something to this. I find this really baffling. I've watched segments of the podcast. The whole thing is well over 3 hours long. I haven't managed to make my way all the way through it. But what I will find very interesting, and I want to kind of share in this episode as well, is him talking about Spock, who of course is one of the extraterrestrials that he has communicated with, allegedly.
Non-linear.
Abstract. Or, yeah, it was much more... I wish I had more experiences with more aliens so I could see the differences, because I only saw two, and Spock, the first one, he was his tapestry, and again, I just say tapestry because I don't know how to explain it, but his fog, so to speak, or whatever, was very, very linear.
Yeah.
It was in my mind's eye, it was very straight like this. His communications were in a straight line. Like the one area would have one piece of communication, and then it would be right here, and then it'd be right here, and then it'd be right here, and then it'd be right here. So it was very straight and
Does he
linear.
introduce himself, or you call him Spock?
Well, no. Okay, so I guess I have to explain that. The reason why, I never got a name from him or anything like that, but his communications were very logical. And so my friend and I we were Star Trek fans, and I just thought it was funny just to refer to him as Spock. And I wasn't referring to him to anybody else. So the joke was lost on the world until I wrote my book. But
did you address him directly when you're sending messages back? Did you address him as Spock, or?
No. I never said that. I don't even know if he would know who Spock was.
Right.
So.
We don't even maybe we don't even know it's a he.
Yeah. Well, I think I guess no, but I did sense that it was a male energy.
And what is Spock saying to you?
Well, it was all very, very number oriented. It wasn't until I got to my second base that I started getting the imagery type stuff. But the first was very Spock. Well, okay, so at the end of my time at the first base, I was doing a communication. I was receiving something, and the only reason that I would communicate back to him is like, can you repeat that, or can you say that again, or do that again? There was no real back and forth. But I went into, and this is the hardest thing to explain, I think, and I say plain, but it was, I wanted to ask him a question, so I was really hesitant to do that. I wanted to start asking questions, and I was trying to get up the courage to break from the formality of our communications so that I could ask a question. And I really didn't know how to do that intuitively. I didn't know what the protocol would be for that. I was receiving stuff, and I could actually convey messages back as far as feedback and stuff, but I didn't know what the formality would be to have an informal conversation or to ask something that had nothing to do with our communication. Mm-hmm. So I I think it was because I was so anxious or charged about it that I asked him a question, but then it was the weirdest thing because it went into another. I say plane, but I can't really explain. It was a different tapestry. Let's just say that way. You know, the tapestry that I keep on alluding to. It was like a you know how I said you can focus further away and then closer. You know, like the lens that I told you about the camera.
Yep.
This one was like a macro, like it came closer to me, and it was different. It was different than the tapestry that I keep talking about.
Now, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that I absolutely understand the way that he's talking about referring and communicating with these beings, because I literally, it's lost on me. I've tried for a lot of today to get my head around it, and the only way that I can really properly describe it is it's like visuals in your head communication. Obviously that would be telepathic, but it's not like a voice comes in. It's more like a scripture, but without words. Kind of the vibe that I'm getting. It's another one of those mind-blowing things that are going on. But what do you guys make of this? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. We down there, jump to get the hell out of that like button and subscribe. And until next time, I'll spook you later. Peace.